Admiral Daniel Torres stood at the observation window of the orbital defense station, watching Earth spin slowly below him. The blue oceans and green lands looked peaceful from up here. 9 billion people lived down there, going about their ordinary lives. They had no idea that everything was about to change. It was a Tuesday morning when the alarms started screaming. Torres ran to the command center, his boots pounding against the metal floor. Officers rushed past him, their faces pale with fear. On the main screen, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Ships were appearing from nowhere, emerging from fold space like monsters crawling out of the darkness. Not 10 ships, not 100. 3,000 warships, each one the size of a small moon, filled the space around Earth. The Vexari had come. Torres had heard stories about them. Every spacefaring human had. The Vexari Imperium had conquered 47 species across the galaxy. They moved from world to world, system to system, erasing civilizations that had existed for millions of years. They did not negotiate. They did not send warnings. They simply arrived and killed everything that lived. Commander Katie Lawson appeared at his side. She was young, barely 30, but she had sharp eyes and a steady voice. "Sir, we are trying to establish communication. They are not responding to any of our signals." Torres knew they would not respond. The Vexari never talked to their victims. "Launch all defense fighters. Activate every weapon system we have. Maybe we can hold them long enough for evacuation ships to launch." But even as he gave the order, Torres knew it was hopeless. Their defense station had 12 plasma cannons and 200 fighters. The Vexari fleet had enough firepower to crack a planet in half. The first wave of human fighters launched into space. Torres watched them on the tactical display, tiny dots of light rushing toward the massive enemy fleet. They fired their weapons, and small explosions bloomed against the Vexari shields. The shields did not even flicker. Then the Vexari fired back. In 3 seconds, all 200 fighters vanished from the display. 200 pilots, gone in the blink of an eye. Torres gripped the edge of the console so hard his knuckles turned white. "They are moving a ship to the front of the fleet," Lawson reported. Her voice was shaking now. "It is different from the others. Larger. There is some kind of device extending from its hull." Torres had read classified reports about this. Intelligence gathered from the ruins of conquered worlds. The Vexari had a weapon they called the Cascade. It did not burn cities or crack continents. It unraveled organic matter at the molecular level. Every living thing touched by its energy simply fell apart, dissolving into nothing. "Get me a channel to Earth," Torres said. "All frequencies. Emergency broadcast." The communication officer worked frantically at her station. "Channel open, sir." Torres leaned toward the microphone. His mouth was dry. "What do you say when you have only minutes to warn 9 billion people?" "This is Admiral Daniel Torres of the Earth Orbital Defense Command. An enemy fleet has arrived. We cannot stop them. Repeat, we cannot stop them. Find shelter underground. Pray if you believe in anything. May God have mercy on us all." He cut the transmission. On the screen, the strange Vexari ship began to glow with pale blue light. Lawson grabbed his arm. "Sir, there is an emergency shuttle in Bay 7. If we leave now, we might escape before they finish." Torres wanted to stay. He wanted to die with his homeworld, with the planet where he was born, where his parents were buried, where his daughter lived with her husband and their baby boy. But something in Lawson's eyes made him move. Someone had to survive. Someone had to tell the other colonies what happened here. They ran. The shuttle launched just as the Cascade weapon fired. Torres pressed his face against the small window and watched the beam of pale light sweep across Earth. It moved slowly, almost gently, like a hand brushing across a table. Wherever it touched, the sensors showed the same thing, all life signs vanishing. The cities went dark one by one. New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai. The great capitals of human civilization, each home to millions of people, went silent in seconds. Torres saw the Amazon rainforest shimmer and fade. He saw the grasslands of Africa turn gray. He saw the blue oceans lose their color as every fish, every whale, every tiny organism died. 17 minutes. That is how long it took to murder a world. When the cascade finished its work, Earth still existed. The buildings stood, the roads remained. The monuments and museums and homes were all untouched. But nothing lived. Not a single blade of grass. Not a single insect. The planet had become a tomb. A perfect preservation of a civilization that no longer existed. The shuttle's communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in a language that the translator struggled to interpret. It was the Vexari Emperor, broadcasting to all remaining human colonies. Species designation, human, status, cleansed from the galactic record. Your homeworld has been purified. Your remaining settlements will be addressed in time. Do not attempt resistance. Resistance is not possible. You have been erased. The transmission ended. Torres sat in silence, staring at nothing. Beside him, Lawson was crying quietly, tears floating away in the zero gravity. Behind them, a few dozen crew members who had made it to the shuttle before launch huddled together, too shocked to speak. 9 billion people. His daughter, his grandson. Everyone he had ever known or loved. Gone in 17 minutes. The Vexari fleet began to disperse, some ships jumping back into fold space, others moving toward the outer planets to destroy any remaining stations. They moved with casual efficiency, like workers finishing a simple job. Torres felt something strange building in his chest. It was not grief, though grief was there. It was not fear, though fear was there too. It was something older and darker. Something humans had carried in their hearts since they first picked up rocks and fought against predators 100 times their size. It was rage. He looked at Lawson. "How many colonies do we have?" She wiped her eyes. 12, sir. All of them received the Emperor's broadcast. Then 12 colonies will know what happened here. Torres turned to face the crew. They looked broken, defeated, ready to give up. He understood. He felt the same way. But giving up was not something humans did well. Listen to me. All of you. The Vexari think they erased us. They think we are finished. They have made a mistake. We are going to make them regret that mistake for the rest of their lives. No one answered. But Torres saw something change in their eyes. A small spark, barely visible, but real. The shuttle turned away from Earth and flew toward the darkness between stars. Behind them, a dead world spun in silence. Ahead of them, a war was waiting to begin. The Vexari had killed humanity's past. They had no idea what they had just awakened in humanity's future. 6 months had passed since Earth died. The 12 human colonies scattered across distant stars were drowning in grief and chaos. Supply lines had collapsed. Governments had fallen apart. Millions of refugees fled from world to world, searching for safety that did not exist. On Haven's Rest, the largest agricultural colony, former Marine Sergeant Ryan Caldwell stood on a landing platform and watched another refugee ship descend through the clouds. The ship was old and damaged, barely holding together. Smoke poured from its engines. When it landed, the doors opened and hundreds of starving people stumbled out into the pale sunlight. Caldwell had seen this scene repeat itself every day for months. He had stopped counting how many ships arrived. He had stopped trying to remember all the faces. There were too many, and they all wore the same expression of hollow despair. A young woman approached him. She was carrying a child in her arms, a small boy who looked no older than 3. "Please," she said, "we have not eaten in 4 days. Is there food here? Is there anywhere safe?" Caldwell looked at the child. The boy reminded him of his nephew, who had lived in Chicago, who had died with everyone else on Earth. He pushed that thought away and pointed toward the colony buildings. "Go to the main hall. Tell them Caldwell sent you. They will give you food and a place to sleep." The woman thanked him and hurried away. Caldwell turned back to the landing platform and saw another ship appearing in the sky. And another. They kept coming, an endless stream of desperate people running from an enemy they could not fight. Far across the galaxy, on the mining colony of Black Rock Station, an engineer named Laura Quinn was not running. She was working. Quinn had found something in the wreckage of a Vexari drone that had crashed on an asteroid near the station. The drone was small, a simple scout unit, but its technology was unlike anything humans had ever created. She spent every waking hour taking it apart, studying each component, trying to understand how it worked. Her workshop was a mess of wires, tools, and scattered notes. She had not slept properly in weeks. Her eyes were red, and her hands were stained with machine oil. But every day she learned something new. "The shields are not generated by power alone," she muttered to herself, writing in her notebook. "There is a frequency component, a resonance pattern. If we could disrupt that pattern—" She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. The idea was clear in her mind. The Vexari were not invincible. Their technology had weaknesses. She just needed to find them. On the research station called Galileo's Hope, Dr. Kevin Park made a discovery that would change everything. Park was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life forms. After Earth's destruction, he had thrown himself into analyzing every piece of data from the attack. He studied radiation patterns, energy signatures, and quantum fluctuations. He barely ate. He barely spoke to anyone. His colleagues worried about him, but they left him alone. Everyone dealt with grief in their own way. Then, on a cold Tuesday morning, exactly 6 months after Earth fell, Park found it. "The Cascade weapon leaves a trace," he announced to his empty laboratory. His voice was hoarse from disuse. "A quantum signature. It is faint, but it is there. And quantum signatures do not lie. They can be tracked backward. They can lead us to the source." He ran calculations for 3 more days. When he finished, he had a map, a path through fold space that led directly to the Vexari homeworld. Park did not trust official channels. The colonial governments were in chaos, filled with cowards and collaborators who wanted to surrender. Instead, he contacted a network of smugglers and resistance fighters who operated in the spaces between colonies. They called themselves the Underground, and they carried his discovery to every corner of human space. The information reached Nicole Harper on the colony of New Geneva. Harper had been a diplomat before the invasion, skilled in negotiation and politics. Now she was something else entirely. She had watched the broadcast of Earth's destruction and felt something break inside her. The old Nicole Harper, who believed in peace and compromise, had died with her homeworld. The woman who remained believed only in survival and revenge. Harper gathered leaders from all 12 colonies. Some came in person, risking dangerous journeys through Vexari-patrolled space. Others joined through encrypted communication channels. They met in a hidden bunker beneath New Geneva's surface and talked for 7 days. There were arguments. Some wanted to surrender and hope for mercy. Some wanted to scatter and hide. Some wanted to fight, but disagreed about how. Harper listened to all of them. Then she stood up and spoke. "The Vexari erased us from their records," she said. Her voice was calm, but hard as steel. "They announced to the galaxy that humanity is dead. They have already forgotten about us and moved on to their next conquest. This is our advantage. They think we are gone. They are not looking for us. They are not afraid of us. We will make them afraid." She laid out her plan. The 12 colonies would unite under a single banner. They would share resources, technology, and people. They would build a secret fleet in hidden shipyards. They would learn the Vexari's weaknesses and exploit them. They would strike without warning and disappear before the enemy could respond. "We will call ourselves the Remnant," Harper said, "because that is what we are, the remnant of a murdered world. And remnants can become fires. Fires can become infernos. We will burn so bright that the Vexari will never forget our name." The vote was not unanimous. 3 colony representatives refused to join, choosing isolation instead. But 9 colonies agreed. 9 scattered flames, coming together in the darkness. Admiral Torres arrived at New Geneva 2 weeks later. He had spent months traveling from colony to colony, gathering survivors and spreading the word. He looked older now, his hair gray and his face lined with exhaustion. But his eyes still burned with the same rage that had filled him the day Earth died. Harper offered him a position as military commander of the Remnant Fleet. He accepted without hesitation. "How long until we are ready to strike?" he asked. Harper looked at the star map on the wall, at the small dots representing human colonies surrounded by the vast darkness of Vexari space. "Years," she admitted. "We are weak. We have almost nothing. But every journey begins with a single step." Torres nodded. "Then we take that step today." Across human space, the scattered flames began to gather. On Haven's Rest, Ryan Caldwell stopped processing refugees and started training soldiers. On Blackrock Station, Laura Quinn continued her research, getting closer to a breakthrough every day. On Galileo's Hope, Dr. Kevin Park refined his maps and calculations, preparing for the day when humanity would finally strike back. The Vexari Empire did not notice any of this. They had already moved on to new conquests, confident that the human problem was solved forever. They could not have been more wrong. 2 years had passed since Earth's destruction. The Vexari Empire had conquered 3 more species in that time, adding their worlds to an empire that stretched across half the galaxy. The humans were forgotten, nothing more than a footnote in Imperial records, a problem that had been solved. The Vexari patrol ship cruised through the Andara system, its crew bored and relaxed. This was a quiet sector, far from any active conquest. The supply depot on the 4th planet handled shipments of fuel and weapons, but nothing interesting ever happened here. The crew members played games, slept, and counted the days until their rotation ended. They never saw the missiles coming. Commander Katie Lawson watched from the bridge of her ship as the Vexari patrol vessel exploded in a ball of orange flame. Her ship was small, a converted mining vessel with weapons bolted onto its hull. It was ugly and slow, but it was invisible to Vexari sensors, hidden behind an asteroid that blocked their scanning frequencies. "Target destroyed," reported her tactical officer. "Moving to Phase 2. Lawson nodded. "All ships, begin attack run on the supply depot." From the darkness of the asteroid field, 11 more ships emerged. They were a strange collection, some military vessels that had escaped Earth's destruction, others civilian ships modified for combat. They moved in perfect formation, striking the depot with waves of plasma fire before the Vexari defenders could even power up their weapons. The battle lasted 12 minutes. When it ended, the supply depot was a burning ruin, and 4 Vexari transport ships had been captured intact. Lawson allowed herself a small smile. It was the first human victory against the Vexari Empire. A tiny victory, almost meaningless in the scale of galactic war. But it was a beginning. She opened a communication channel to all human colonies. "This is Commander Lawson of the Remnant Fleet. The Andara supply depot has been destroyed. The enemy bleeds. Humanity endures." The message spread across human space in hours. On colony worlds, people gathered around communication screens and wept with joy. For 2 years they had felt helpless, waiting for the Vexari to come and finish what they started. Now, for the first time, they had hope. The Vexari response came quickly. An Imperial admiral named Korath dispatched a battle group of 50 warships to eliminate what he called the human remnants. He expected an easy mission, a simple cleanup operation. He found nothing. The remnant fleet had vanished. Korath searched for 3 months. His ship scanned every asteroid, every moon, every piece of debris in the region. They found empty space. The humans had disappeared like ghosts. The truth was simpler than magic. The remnant had learned to hide in places the Vexari never thought to look. Dead moons with no atmosphere. Abandoned stations from extinct civilizations. The wreckage of their own destroyed ships, floating silent and cold in the void. They powered down all systems, drifted without heat or light, and waited. When Korath's battle group finally gave up and returned to their patrols, the remnant emerged again. On Black Rock Station, Laura Quinn completed her greatest achievement. She called it the resonance pulse. "The Vexari shields operate on a specific frequency," she explained to the gathered remnant commanders. "My device generates a counterfrequency that disrupts the resonance pattern. When the pulse hits a Vexari ship, their shields collapse, their weapons go offline, their engines shut down. The ship becomes completely helpless." Admiral Torres leaned forward, his eyes intense. "For how long?" "Between 5 and 15 minutes depending on the size of the ship. Long enough for boarding teams to get inside." Torres looked at Ryan Caldwell, who had become the remnant's leading combat instructor. "Can your teams capture a ship in 15 minutes? Caldwell grinned. It was not a pleasant expression. "Give me 10. The first test of the resonance pulse came a month later. A Vexari cruiser, 3 times larger than any ship in the remnant fleet, was patrolling near the colony of Far Haven. Lawson's ships approached carefully, staying hidden until they were within range. The pulse fired. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the Vexari cruiser's lights flickered and died. Its engines went silent. Its weapons drooped and powered down. Caldwell's boarding team launched in assault shuttles, crossing the distance in minutes. They breached the hull in 4 places simultaneously, flooding the corridors with soldiers in armored suits. The Vexari crew fought back, but they were disorganized and confused. Their weapons would not fire. Their doors would not seal. Their communications were dead. The battle inside the ship was brutal and close. Humans and Vexari fought with knives, clubs, and bare hands in the dark corridors. Caldwell led his team through the engineering section, cutting down every enemy in their path. Blood floated in zero gravity, forming red spheres that splattered against walls and armor. 9 minutes after the breach, the ship was secured. When Caldwell reached the bridge, he found the Vexari captain still alive, wounded but conscious. The alien looked at him with 6 dark eyes, its mandibles clicking in what might have been confusion. "You were destroyed," the captain said through the translator. "Your species was cleansed. You cannot be here." Caldwell grabbed the captain by its throat and lifted it off the deck. "Tell your emperor something for me. Tell him that humanity remembers Earth. Tell him that we are coming for him. Tell him to be afraid." He threw the captain into an escape pod and launched it toward Vexari space. The news spread through the Empire like a virus. Humans had captured an Imperial cruiser. Humans had defeated Vexari soldiers in combat. Humans were still alive. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Vexari felt something unfamiliar. They did not have a word for it in their language, so they borrowed a human word. Fear. The Ghost War had begun. Over the next 3 years, the remnant fleet struck dozens of targets across Vexari space. Supply depots, patrol ships, communication relays, and mining stations all fell to human attacks. Each victory brought new weapons, new ships, and new recruits from the colonies. The Vexari tried everything to stop them. They increased patrols. They changed their shield frequencies. They set traps and ambushes. Nothing worked. The humans struck without warning, took what they needed, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Nicole Harper coordinated the war from her hidden command center on New Geneva. Star maps covered the walls, each one marked with red dots showing successful attacks. The number of dots grew every week. "They are starting to notice us," she said during a meeting with Torres and Lawson. "Imperial Command is getting nervous. They have pulled ships from 3 active conquests to hunt for us." Torres nodded. "Good. Let them hunt. Every ship chasing ghosts is a ship not attacking colonies." "It will not last forever," Harper warned. "Eventually, they will commit enough forces to find us. We need to strike first while we still can." She pulled up a star map showing Vexari Prime, the enemy homeworld. "Dr. Park has finished his calculations. We know where they live. We know how to get there. The question is, are we ready?" Torres looked at the map for a long moment. "Not yet, but soon. Very soon." Outside the bunker in the cold darkness of space, the remnant fleet continued to grow. 200 ships now, each one crewed by humans who had lost everything and feared nothing. The ghosts were gathering for war. 5 years had passed since the death of Earth. The remnant fleet had grown into something the Vexari could no longer ignore. 200 warships, most of them captured from the enemy, now flew under human command. Hidden shipyards on dead moons produced weapons and armor. Training camps on distant asteroids turned farmers and engineers into soldiers. Admiral Daniel Torres stood before the War Council in the underground bunker on New Geneva. The room was crowded with commanders, scientists, and colony representatives. Everyone knew why they were here. Everyone had been waiting for this moment. Torres activated the holographic display. A star map appeared, showing the vast expanse of Vexari space. At the center, glowing red, was a single point labeled Vexar Prime. "Operation Reckoning," Torres said. "Our target is the Vexari homeworld. Dr. Park's quantum trace analysis has given us exact coordinates. We know how to get there. We know how to breach their defensive perimeter. We know how to win." A murmur passed through the crowd. Some faces showed excitement, others showed doubt. One of the colony representatives, an older man named Gregory, raised his hand. "Admiral, with respect, this is suicide. Vexar Prime is the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy. Their entire home fleet is stationed there. We have 200 ships. They have thousands." Torres nodded slowly. "You are right. By any reasonable calculation, we cannot win this battle. Our casualties will be extreme. Many of us will not survive." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But I am not asking you to be reasonable. I am asking you to be human." He pressed a button and the display changed. Images appeared, thousands of them, cycling through in rapid succession. Faces, human faces, men, women, children, old and young, every race and nationality that had once called Earth home. 9 billion people. Torres said quietly. Murdered in 17 minutes. They never had a chance to fight. They never had a chance to run. They simply died because an empire decided they should not exist. His voice hardened. The Vexari took everything from us. Our world, our families, our future. They erased us from their records and moved on to their next meal. They think we are extinct. They think we are forgotten. Tonight, we remind them that humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not die quietly. The room was silent. Then, one by one, the commanders and representatives began to stand. Some were crying. Some were grim-faced and determined. But all of them stood. Nicole Harper stepped forward. The vote is unanimous. Operation Reckoning is approved. May whatever gods exist have mercy on the Vexari, because we will not. The fleet gathered at a rendezvous point in deep space, far from any patrol routes. 200 ships, ranging from massive captured cruisers to tiny assault shuttles, floating in perfect formation. The crews performed final checks on weapons and engines. Soldiers sharpened blades and loaded ammunition. Pilots ran through combat simulations one last time. On the bridge of the flagship, a captured Vexari dreadnought, renamed the Remembrance, Torres received reports from his commanders. Lawson would lead the main assault force. Caldwell's boarding teams were ready. Laura Quinn had installed resonance pulse generators on 50 ships. Dr. Park had programmed the fold space coordinates personally. Everything was ready. Harper's voice came through the fleet-wide communication system. Soldiers of the Remnant, in a few hours we will jump into fold space and travel deeper into enemy territory than any human has ever gone. Most of us will not return. I will not lie to you about that. But we did not come this far to live forever. We came this far to be remembered. She paused, and when she continued, her voice was thick with emotion. I had a daughter on Earth. Her name was Emma. She was 7 years old when the cascade hit. She was afraid of the dark, and she loved to dance. And she had just learned to read. She will never grow up. She will never fall in love or have children of her own. She will never know that her mother became part of something greater than herself. Torres saw crew members around him wiping their eyes. Everyone had lost someone. Everyone carried the same weight. Tonight we fight for Emma, Harper said. We fight for all the children who never got to grow up. We fight for all the songs that will never be sung and all the stories that will never be told. We fight for 9 billion ghosts who deserve to be avenged. The Vexari think they wrote our ending. Tonight, we write theirs. The fleet began to move, ships aligning themselves with the fold space gate they had captured and reprogrammed. The gate hummed with energy, tearing a hole in reality that led to the heart of enemy space. Torres gave the order. All ships, jump. One by one, the remnant fleet vanished into the fold. The journey through fold space took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of waiting, planning, and preparing. 3 weeks of knowing that death waited on the other side. Some soldiers wrote letters to loved ones that might never be delivered. Some prayed to gods they were not sure existed. Some simply stared at the walls and thought about the past. Caldwell spent the time training his boarding teams, drilling them until every movement was automatic. Quinn ran diagnostic after diagnostic on her resonance pulse generators, making sure nothing would fail at the critical moment. Torres barely slept, studying tactical simulations and adjusting plans for every possible scenario. On the final night before arrival, Torres visited the ship's observation deck. The swirling colors of fold space filled the window, beautiful and terrifying. He thought about his daughter, about the baby grandson he had never gotten to hold. He thought about Earth, spinning silent and dead around its sun. Lawson found him there. She stood beside him in silence for a long moment. "Are you afraid?" she asked. Torres considered the question. "No," he said finally. "I was afraid for the first year. Afraid we would fail. Afraid the Vexari would find us. Afraid of dying." He shook his head. "I am not afraid anymore. I know exactly what we are doing and why. There is a strange peace in that." Lawson nodded. "I feel the same way. We have been running and hiding for 5 years. Tomorrow, we stop running." The ship shuddered slightly as it began its exit sequence. Outside the window, the colors of fold space started to fade, replaced by the familiar blackness of normal space. Torres straightened his uniform and turned toward the door. "It is time." They walked to the bridge together. Around them, the crew took their positions with calm efficiency. On the main screen, stars appeared as the ship completed its transition. And there, hanging in the void like a bloated spider at the center of its web, was Vexar Prime. The planet was huge, 3 times the size of Earth, covered in gray cities and black oceans. Orbital stations circled it in layers, bristling with weapons. The Imperial home fleet filled the surrounding space, thousands of warships ready to defend their masters. Behind Torres, the rest of the remnant fleet emerged from fold space, 200 ships against an empire. A handful of survivors against the conquerors of the galaxy. Torres smiled. It was a cold, hard expression. "All ships," he said, "begin attack." The Battle of Vexar Prime had begun. The Battle of Vexar Prime lasted 3 days. When the remnant fleet first appeared above the enemy homeworld, the Vexari did not believe their sensors. Humans were extinct. Humans had been erased 5 years ago. The ships appearing on their screens had to be a malfunction, a ghost in the system. Anything other than what they appeared to be. That moment of disbelief cost them dearly. Commander Katie Lawson led the main assault force straight into the heart of the Vexari formation. Her ships fired resonance pulses in coordinated waves, disabling dozens of enemy vessels before they could power their weapons. The Vexari fleet scrambled to respond, but their communications were confused, and their commanders were shouting contradictory orders. "Push forward," Lawson ordered. "Do not give them time to organize." The remnant ships drove deep into the enemy lines, weaving between the massive Vexari dreadnoughts like wolves among elephants. Human pilots had spent 5 years learning every weakness of their enemy's ships. They knew exactly where to strike, exactly how to move, exactly when to fire. The Vexari began to adapt. Their commanders regained control. Their ships started working together, forming defensive lines that the remnant could not easily penetrate. Casualties mounted on both sides. Human ships exploded in balls of flame. Vexari vessels drifted dead in space. On the bridge of the Remembrance, Admiral Torres watched the battle unfold on the tactical display. Red and blue dots swirled around each other in a deadly dance. Every red dot that disappeared was a friend, a comrade, someone he had known and trained and led into this impossible fight. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "the enemy is concentrating their forces around the orbital defense platform. If they complete their formation, we will not be able to reach the planet." Torres nodded. He had planned for this. "Signal the Suicide Squadron. Tell them it is time." 20 ships broke away from the main fleet. They were older vessels, damaged beyond proper repair, crewed by volunteers who knew they would not survive. Torres had asked for 50 volunteers for this mission. 300 had stepped forward. The Suicide Squadron accelerated toward the orbital platform, ignoring the enemy ships that tried to intercept them. Vexari weapons tore through their hulls. Explosions ripped ships apart. But they kept coming, driven by something stronger than fear or self-preservation. 12 ships reached the platform. They did not try to dock or board. They simply flew straight into the station's reactor core and detonated their engines. The explosion was visible from the surface of Vexar Prime. The orbital platform, the centerpiece of the planet's defense network, disintegrated in a ball of white fire. The Vexari fleet lost contact with their commanders. Their coordination collapsed. "Push through now," Torres ordered. "All ships, advance." The remnant fleet surged forward. Ryan Caldwell's boarding teams launched from their ships, assault shuttles screaming toward the Vexari flagship. The enemy tried to stop them, but there were too many, coming from too many directions. Caldwell was the first one through the breach. He had done this 100 times during the Ghost War, but this was different. This was the end. Behind him, his soldiers poured into the enemy ship, spreading through its corridors like a flood. The fighting inside the flagship was the worst Caldwell had ever experienced. The Vexari crew knew they were defending their Emperor's own vessel. They fought with desperate fury, using every weapon they had. Caldwell lost half his team in the first 10 minutes. He kept pushing forward. They reached the bridge after 2 hours of continuous combat. Caldwell kicked down the final door and found himself face to face with the Vexari Admiral, a massive creature covered in ceremonial armor. The Admiral drew a curved blade and charged. The fight lasted less than a minute. Caldwell was smaller and faster. He ducked under the Admiral's swing, drove his knife into the gap between armor plates, and twisted. The Admiral fell. "Flagship secured," Caldwell reported through his communicator. "Turning their weapons on the enemy fleet now." Below them, on the surface of Vexar Prime, Laura Quinn was completing her own mission. She had descended in a cloaked shuttle, slipping through the chaos of the battle to reach the planet's surface. With her was a small team of engineers and the most important piece of technology humanity had ever created. It was a modified cascade device. Quinn had spent 3 years reverse engineering the weapon that killed Earth. She understood its principles, its mechanisms, its capabilities, and she had improved it. Her version did not simply destroy all life. It could be targeted, it could be controlled. She set up the device in a valley 3 kilometers from the Imperial Palace. Her hands were steady as she programmed the targeting parameters. The palace, the military command center, the weapons factories, every center of Vexari military power and nothing else. "Nicole," she said through her communicator, "we are ready. Awaiting your authorization." On the remembrance, Nicole Harper received the message. She looked at Torres, who nodded silently. Then she opened a channel to the Vexari Emperor. "This is Nicole Harper, leader of the human remnant. Your fleet is broken. Your orbital defenses are destroyed. We have a cascade device aimed at your palace. You have 1 minute to surrender unconditionally." The Emperor's response was immediate and filled with rage. "You are insects. You are a species that should not exist. We will destroy you. We will hunt down every last human in the galaxy and erase you completely." Harper smiled sadly. "You showed Earth no mercy. You erased us. You had your chance to be better than what you are." She looked at Torres one more time, then spoke the final words. "Laura, fire!" The modified cascade activated. A beam of pale light swept across the Imperial Palace, the military command center, the weapons factories. Every uniformed officer, every armed soldier, every piece of military equipment dissolved into nothing. The Emperor and his generals vanished in an instant, but the civilians survived. The ordinary Vexari, the ones who had never conquered anyone, the ones who had simply been born into an empire they did not choose. They lived. When the light faded, the Vexari Imperium was no more. Its leaders were gone. Its military was shattered. The 47 species they had conquered rose up across the galaxy, inspired by the impossible victory they had witnessed. The war was over. Torres stood on the bridge of the Remembrance and looked out at the stars. Somewhere behind him, far across the galaxy, Earth still orbited its sun. Silent, empty, a tomb for 9 billion souls who deserved to be remembered. Humanity did not go home. There was no home to return to. Instead, they scattered across the galaxy, building new colonies, forming alliances with the freed species, creating something that had never existed before, a community of worlds united not by conquest, but by choice. 50 years later, a memorial station orbited the silent Earth. Visitors from 100 worlds came to pay respects, to learn the history of the species that had refused to die. A young Vexari diplomat stood before the monument, reading the inscription carved in 100 languages. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything humanity had been through. Here fell 9 billion. Here rose the remnant. Here began the age of unity. Humanity endures. She bowed her head in silence, understanding at last why her grandparents' empire had fallen. Not to superior weapons, not to greater numbers, but to something the Vexari had never understood. Some species, when pushed to the edge of extinction, do not fade quietly into the void. They burn brighter, and their light, once kindled, never goes out.